I'm an addict named James T.
Hi, James.
Hi, everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to thank God because I believe it's by His mercy and grace that I was led to Narcotics Anonymous. I believe this is a God-given program. If you have a difference of opinion, that's okay. I would invite you to read our literature. That's just my interpretation. You know, I would like to thank the convention committee for putting on this fantastic voyage. Yeah. Right? And right now, I'd like to, if you could do something for me. Anybody with 16 years or more, could you please stand at this moment?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here when I got here. Thank you for showing me this thing called Narcotics Anonymous, how to become a man, what it is to have a commitment, what it is to be responsible here. I'm very grateful for you, for all the time that you've given up to open up meetings, to have these conventions. You know, this convention is very dear to my heart. It was the first convention I ever been to. You know, I'm going to read a little bit about my bottom. I'm going to talk about my bottom here. My bottom's in the basic text. It says, we reached a point in our lives where we felt like a lost cause. We had little worth to family or friends or on the job. Many of us were unemployed and unemployable. Any form of success was frightening and unfamiliar. We didn't know what to do. As the feeling of self-loathing grew, we needed to use more and more to mask our feelings. We were sick and tired of the pain and trouble. We were frightened and ran from fear. No matter how far we ran, we always carried fear with us. We were hopeless, useless, and lost. Failure had become our way of life. Self-esteem was non-existent. Perhaps the most painful of all was the desperation. Isolation and denial of our addiction kept us moving along a downhill path. Any hope of getting better disappeared. Helplessness, emptiness, and fear became our way of life. We were complete failures. Personality change was what we really needed. Change from self-destructive patterns of life became necessary. When we lied, cheated, or stole, we degraded ourselves in our own eyes. We had had enough self-destruction. We experienced our powerlessness. When nothing relieved our paranoia and fear, we hit bottom and became ready to ask for help. That was my bottom. My bottom was I surrounded myself around so many people and felt so alone. My bottom was being around my children for 5 minutes and just being unbearable, and I would have to go run up to the loft and get one more. Come down and being around my kids for another 10 minutes. And then going up to the loft just to get one more, you know, coming back down and then going back up just to get one more. And then my daughter looks at me like around 5 years old and says, you don't want to spend no time with your kids? Like, that's my bottom. My bottom was going through it so bad that I thought maybe I was intelligent enough that if I could just hear myself process how I got here, how I got to this point, maybe I can figure out how to get out of this, right? Because you don't know about Narcotics Anonymous until you get here. You know, my bottom was being in San Francisco at an after party at 6 in the morning, and the bar just opening up, and the bartender admiring my gold chain, and me telling him, look, I got this medallion and this gold chain, I'll give it to you. Just make me 2 strong drinks and listen to me for 15 minutes. You know, when I was going through it so bad, they did the shift change on me that early in the morning, right? You know, my bottom was just, that's it, you know, about the pain. You know, we're all here, right? My bottom was I started developing these heart problems, right? And I'm in this relationship, and I think, man, this girl's really stressing me out, right? Because you know how it is before you get here. It's always you. It's never me. You know what I'm saying? My inability to accept personal responsibility. I was creating my own problems, right? Right. It's not the drugs I'm using. It's not all the stuff I'm doing. Right. It's you. It's not me. Right. So I get it in my head, man. I need to break up with this girl, right? And I talk about this because this was my breaking point that led me to Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I broke up with her. She wasn't happy, but I just needed a friend. I needed somebody to talk to, right? I was in so much pain. I was lashing out. I was hurting people, you know. And she wasn't happy, but she stayed with me, right? She stayed with me that night. And before you know it, I'm on the phone trying to get a hold of that stuff I just got rid of, right? Right? And I had this big old ego. I thought I was somebody out there. You know, I bought a house on, you know, doing things and accumulated a lot of stuff, lost a lot of stuff, and sold the shirt off my back for a hit. You know what I mean? I'm an addict. And but I had this big old ego thinking I was somebody out there, and she called me the sack chaser. And one thing led to another. She spit in my face. We had this altercation, and we put hands on each other, and that was it for me. I remember thinking I'm crazy, being on top of her, holding her hostage. And I talk about this stuff because I don't ever want to forget why I'm here. I never want to forget the stuff that I did and the places that the disease took me. I remember just justifying all kinds of stuff that doesn't even matter, right? Like, she always gets her way, she ain't going nowhere, right? And I got a moment of clarity, like, in the morning time, and I said, I'm pretty sure it was God. He said, just give her her keys and let her go. And so I let her go, and that was it for me. That was never okay. I never put my hands on a lady. I heard a lot of people in the name of F you owe me money, but I wasn't raised like that. And it really affected my spirit, and I walked around, and I just walked around in tears all the time and trying to reach out for help, not knowing who to reach out to. And my mother calls me and she says, hey, your dad just left. Would you come stay with me? And they've been together since junior high. So I said, sure. She didn't know how to be alone. So I packed up my stuff. I owned a house out in West Pittsburgh at the time in Northern California. And so I pack up and I go over to her house, and I'm just a body there. I'm just crying. I'm just walking, pacing back and forth. And I get up enough courage to walk into my mother's room, and I said, look, I hang around dangerous people. I become a dangerous person, and this is the type of things that I do. And I told some stuff to my mother that a mother shouldn't hear from her son, but I needed her to know the severity of the situation, right? And she says, I don't even know how to help you. I can't even help myself. Maybe you could tell your grandmother what you just told me. And I'm thinking another shift change, right? So I go over to my grandmother's house, and she was a preacher's wife. I think maybe I need to be prayed over. I don't know what I need. I don't know about you guys yet, right? So I go over there, she prays with me, and I tell her the stuff that I told my mother, and she says, hey, I got a guy I can call. Maybe you can tell him what you just told me. And I'm thinking, here we go, right? Right? Now I'm telling the whole world what's going on. I don't know about all this, right? But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm at my bottom. I am wounded. You know what I'm saying? I'm walking around mumbling to myself, having conversations with myself, answering myself, right? Crazy stuff. And so I'm on the phone with this guy, and he's one of us. He was living in Bakersfield at the time. And I started throwing up on the phone, this, that, and he's like, oh, hold on. He's like, you ready to do something about your problem? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to do so. I got problems, right? He's like, man, go on your mom's couch and go to sleep. You know what I mean? I'll be there in the morning to come and get you. And I'm thinking, come get me and go where, right? I don't know where Bakersfield is. I think it's by Tehachapi somewhere. I know I did a couple runs over there. So this is how tore up it was when I got here. I go on my mom's couch. I get it in my head, like, when my mom goes to sleep, I'm going to sneak out her window, right? Right? Like, I'm a grown, they asked me not to cuss, so I'm a not cuss. But I'm a grown man. Like, I never, even growing up as a child, I never snuck out of my parents' window. You know what I'm saying? I always just walked out the front door. But anyways, so David's like on his way to come and get me, and his name is David J., for those of you that may know who that man was. But, he's one of us. He dropped everything he was doing, left Bakersfield, and drove to Northern California to come get me. And he took me to Bakersfield. And when I was here, he was sponsoring a gentleman that ran an apartment complex. And I was able to detox in an empty apartment complex on where they were staying on an air mattress. And I remember eating and coming down and just being real saturated and just really not being able to have a conversation. And the Grand Canyon was on the TV, and I was like, yeah, the Grand Canyon's cool. I remember when I went there. And he's like, you want to go there? And I was like, yeah, I want to go there. We ain't going to go there, right? So we go to the Grand Canyon, right? And I talk about this because, it's on my way to go hit my first meeting on Narcotics Anonymous, right? So we're on our way to the Grand Canyon, and we stop in this place called Needles, right? Now, I don't know if you know where Needles is, but it's on the corner of walk and don't walk, right? There's not a lot to it, right? So we get into Needles, and if there's any newcomers here, welcome. If you're not sure what's going on, it's okay. Just stay here. If you got so much pain you want to run out of this building and you want to go get loaded, don't. Don't. Stay here. Everything is going to be okay. You just keep doing what we do. I was just like you. I was really, really messed up when I got here. I went to my first meeting in Needles. People were hugging me, and I'm thinking, and this is how bad it was when I got here. I was thinking, man, everybody's trying to steal my wallet right now, right? Really, and that's what it was like at my first meeting, man. I was tore up. I didn't hear nothing. We went and saw the Grand Canyon like a good little newcomer. I stayed awake for 5 minutes, took a picture. You know what I'm saying? And went to sleep on them. And then we go stay in a hotel, and then we go back to Needles, and it's where I hit my second NA meeting. And this is how bad it was when I got here. I mean, I was tore up when I got here. I said, this is it. They gave me my last scenery before I end up in the trunk for that one time that I did to that one person, right? And you know, I remember the first person who gave me a hug, Ellen from Needles, and I was sitting in a meeting and I was just terrified, and I was, you know, all that macho stuff went out the door, and I was in so much pain, and I didn't really hear a whole lot, but what I did hear that really got to me was I heard our message. You know, I heard somebody say that an addict, any addict, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. And I thought, any addict, right? An addict like me, an addict that did the stuff that I did, right? There's a chance for me, you know, and I held on to that. And that's what I got out of that meeting. And when I left that meeting, you know, I started going to a lot of meetings. I started, you know, doing more than a meeting a day for 90 days. I was doing like 2 meetings, and I was thinking, man, this is what we do. We do meetings, right? You know, I'm doing a meeting in the afternoon. I'm doing a meeting at night. And let me tell you what, meetings ain't going to keep you clean. They're not. We got to do some work around here. You know, what I can tell you is that I was sitting around here in Bakersfield because I lived here for a little while, and I stayed with David, and then he became my sponsor, and he was like, you got to get a service position, you got to start reading the literature. I was like, what about these steps? He's like, you got to read the basic text before you can even start on the steps so you even know what this program is about. And I was like, okay, tomorrow, right? You know how tomorrow don't ever come. And I was just in so much pain still because I didn't surrender, and I didn't like take suggestions from my sponsor. I had him by name only, and I would sit in the back and I would just look for another victim to take home. Somebody to get me outside of myself, somebody to make me feel better because I felt worthless. I felt, you know, useless, lost, right? Still in Narcotics Anonymous because I wasn't working the program, you know, and that's what I did. And I'm taking you home tomorrow, you know, I'm going to take you home now. And I was sick, you know, and I went back to Contra Costa County, and I was outside of a meeting, and somebody says, you ever think you're going to get loaded again? And I said, man, there's no way. I still got my house. I'm not going to put my house in a pipe and smoke it. I started building a relationship with my daughter, and I was believing all that stuff and got loaded the next day, you know. And what I could tell you is, for me, and my interpretation was I don't even think I relapsed because I wasn't working a program of Narcotics Anonymous, but I go to meetings, I do conventions, right? You know? And what I could tell you is I was at a noon meeting, and we all started playing pool after the noon meeting. A bunch of people, oh, remember when we used to do it like that? Talking about the good old times. Remember when we used to do it like that? Well, the good times will get you loaded. That's why I talked about that stuff in the very beginning of my share, because I don't ever want to forget what led me here. I don't ever want to forget that pain that I was feeling. You know, I'm very grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. That's why I continue to be of service. I'm not comfortable up here, but I was asked to be of service, so I'm up here. You know, I'm a grateful addict. You know, I know a grateful addict don't get loaded, you know. So I'm ripping and running, man, and if you're here, there ain't no guarantees you're going to make it back. Just because I relapsed doesn't mean you can relapse and come back off one more. You know, our literature says that those who do not work a program of recovery on a daily basis may relapse, right? On a daily basis. It goes on later to say that we have never seen a person who lives the Narcotics Anonymous program relapse. That's a very powerful statement right there, right? So anyways, I'm trying to figure out how to get back into the rooms, right? I'm like, man, how do I get back in here? I'm trying to go to meetings. I can only stay here for like 5 minutes before I run out crying, and the disease just has me. You know, I'm trying to come back in and it has me by my neck, just pulling me back like they don't want you here. What are you doing in here? You know what I mean? I'd be at a hotel peeking out the window, and the guys would be like, man, the cops ain't out there. I'd be like, man, shut up. Trying to get my butt to that new meeting across the street, and that was the reality of it. There was a new meeting across the street, and I couldn't get there. The disease had a grip on me, you know, and I finally reached the point where I called David, and I said, David, man, I need some help, man. You need to put me somewhere. I don't know what's up. Are you still my sponsor? Man, I need you. And he's like, man, I'm so grateful that you called, you know. So what I did was I took his suggestions, you know, and I read the literature. I started working steps. I got through the steps. And in that process, I started building a relationship with God. I started having to practice going on dates by myself, because I always needed somebody to make me feel better. So I'll be like, people be after a meeting, hey, you want to go for coffee? And I'd be like, nah, man, I got a date with myself. You know what I'm saying? And they'd be clowning me too. You know what I mean? They'd be cutting it up. But I was real talk. I needed to go and figure out the type of person I was to be comfortable with myself, with me and my God, and build a relationship with God so I could be okay with me, so that I could be okay around you. You know what I mean? And I don't mean be by yourself if you're in a bad place, because that's not what we're about. You know what I mean? We're about supporting each other, lifting up each other, and being there for one another, right? I'm just saying that I needed to put time aside for me and my God, right? It says in our literature, it says, living just for today relieves the burden of the past and fear of the future. We learn to take whatever actions are necessary and leave the results in the hands of our higher power. Key word there is actions. You know what I'm saying? We don't just ask for stuff and then stuff happens. You know what I mean? This is a program of action, right? We take whatever actions are necessary and leave the results in our hands of our higher power. It says, surrendering our will puts us into contact with the higher power who fills that empty place inside that nothing could ever fill, right? So, I get a service position, and I've had a service position ever since I've been clean. I'm very grateful. Like I said, I do service because I'm grateful. Some people do service because they think it's fun and this and that, and that's great. It should be fun for you, you know what I mean? But I do it because I'm very grateful and I want to give back, And I've had a lot of service positions, area, group, all that stuff, committee level. And for me, it was real important to have a group service position, because it got me to go to a meeting when I didn't want to go. I'd be like, man, I don't want to go to a meeting right now. You hear the same old stuff that person's been talking about for a year. Man, they ain't got over there yet. And that'd be my own stuff, right? You talk about whatever you need to talk about. But that'd be the funk I was in, right? And I would go to a meeting. I got to bring the literature. Man, I got to go, right? And I would always feel better. So I'm very grateful. I got my home group is the Point of Recovery Monday night meeting, Narcotics Anonymous. We do a tradition every other week, and then we have a speaker discussion the other weeks. And that's been my home group ever since I've been clean. And like I said, I'm just very grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. I got married in this program, and I got a divorce in this program. And what I can tell you is that we get a lot of things around here. We accumulate some things, we lose some things. Some of us go through really hard times, and we're going to go through hard times. It ain't always going to be on the up and up. You know what I'm saying? We learn how to live life on life's terms, right? But what I can tell you is one of the gifts that Narcotics Anonymous, one of the greatest gifts Narcotics Anonymous has given me, other than freedom from active addiction, is love, right? To where I can actually love myself, to where I can love another person for who they are, not for who I want them to be, right? And going through my divorce, I realized that going through the process with my sponsor, and I call my sponsor and I say, hey, I think I'm getting a divorce right now, and he's like, I'm in Mexico, and I'm like, what? I said, well, you're in Mexico, what is that? I need you right now, you know what I mean? He's like, man, you've been around here for a minute, you know what to do. I said, I know what to do. What is that? You know what I'm saying? I ain't going to a meeting, click, right? And but what you guys taught me around here is to not react, right? So I went to my room. I didn't react to the situation with my wife, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I was quiet and I was still, and I didn't react, and I prayed, and I just seen where it was going to lead me, and my sponsor showed up the next day. So he drove, to come swoop me up like a wounded little child I was at the moment. But and then they asked me to share at this meeting, and I share the message and not the mess. And what's the message? The message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Any addict, right? Like when I got here, I heard a black addict, a white addict, a gay addict, straight addict, any addict, an addict like me, right? But now that I've been here for a while, I don't get to be a black addict, a white addict, a gay addict, a straight addict. When we walk in these rooms, what are we? We're an addict in recovery, right? And when we can learn to truly tear down those barriers, we can truly love each other unconditionally. That's what I believe anyway. So I used to be in my sponsor's pocket a lot. I used to go to a lot of conventions with him. I used to do a lot of stuff with him. We used to run all over the United States together. And I used to always hear him talk about like reuniting with his daughter one day because he had signed over his rights early in recovery. And he didn't know how to contact her after that. He didn't know how to reach her. And his hope was that one day he would reunite with her. And I had a lot of hope from this guy. I saw the way he lived his life, and he did a lot of footwork, and God blessed him in a lot of ways. So one day he gives me a call, and he says, "Hey, Bubba," because that's what a lot of my close friends and family call me. And he says, "Hey, would you pray with me?" I said, "Sure, what do you want to pray about?" Because me and my sponsor, we pray about everything. Pray about any major decisions we do, always put God first. And he says, my daughter contacted me. He's like, "I'm about to go meet her." So I was like, man, that's amazing. All right, let's pray it up. So we pray it up. He goes and meets her. He brings her back to Northern California from Oklahoma. And he asked me to come over to meet her. So I go over there. I meet her. It's nice to meet you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then we're sitting on his doorstep talking, just me and him. He's like, "What do you think about my daughter?" And I think, man, that's so amazing, right? I think it's a beautiful thing that you were able to reunite with your daughter. And he's like, "No, man, what do you think about taking my daughter out?" And I said, "Man, don't ever ask me that again." I was like, "Don't ever ask me that again." You know what I'm saying? And I left. I bounced. I was tripping. Because I still got issues, right? And so I leave, right? And I don't live close to him. I bounce. And then he calls me the next day and he said, "Hey, my lock is broke. I need you to change this lock out." And I'm thinking, okay. All right, so I get my tools, I go over there, I change the lock out, and he's like, "Hey, you think about what I said?" And I was like, "What are you talking about, right?" And he's like, "What do you think about my daughter, man? Just take her out." And I was like, "Look," I said, "don't ever ask me that again. I never had another relationship with another man the way I have with you, and I'm not taking your daughter out." And he said, "Bubba, I know everything about you. I'd be honored if you took my daughter out." And I started crying. Just bawling, right? Because the reality is that I use my sponsor like you're supposed to. You know what I'm saying? He guided me through the 12 steps. I was honest. Worked out all my reservations. Didn't have any reservations. Was completely honest about everything. He watched me grow from the man I was to the man who I was at that point, right? And it affected my spirit, right, when he said that. And so I took his daughter out. And when one door closes, another one opens, right? We're married today, so, But I'm very grateful for all the things that I've been through in Narcotics Anonymous. Going through that divorce, like that divorce that I went through, I realized that, see, we got a divorce because she wanted to use. She's like, "I want to go to the bar, I want to go do that stuff." And I said, "Hey, look, I don't get down like that. Because I'll tell you what, if I don't put God and Narcotics Anonymous first, I ain't going to have nothing else. And I've been here for a while to know that oh baby, ain't going to change nothing. That's real talk. I know if I want to go do something, I'm going to go do it. And I could love her for her and not have to trip on what's she really doing. Why does she really, who she really want to be messing around with at the bar, right? And because that's the guy I used to be, And going through this process with my sponsor, I realized that I wasn't that guy no more. And I didn't have to be that guy. And that's what I talk about is Narcotics Anonymous has taught me to love somebody, just love them for them, and not what I need them to be or what I want them to be or what I think it should look like, It says in our basic text, it says, "We come to know ourselves for the first time. We experience new sensations, to love, to be loved, to know that people care about us. We have concern and compassion for others. We find ourselves doing and enjoying things we never thought we would be doing. We make mistakes and learn from them. We experience failure. We learn to succeed. Often we have to face some type of crisis in our recovery, such as the death of a loved one, financial difficulties, or divorce. These are realities of life. They don't go away just because we get clean. Some of us, even after years of recovery, found ourselves jobless, homeless, and penniless. Entertained the thought that staying clean was not paying off. The old thinking stirred up self-pity, resentment, and anger. No matter how painful life tragedies can be for us, one thing is clear. We must not use no matter what. If you're going through it, man, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? If I ain't been through it, or your sponsor ain't been through it, I bet you know somebody who has. We'll be there for you. It's a feeling. It's going to pass. Just don't get loaded. You know, we go through a lot of funerals around here of somebody that they thought they just had one more. Last year I went to a funeral of somebody who I got clean with, man, that thought he had one more. His wife was looking for him, and he was dead in the bathroom for a couple days because he thought he had one more. There's no guarantees you're going to make it back. You know, so if you're here, stay here, man. We love you. You know, my sponsor, he started developing, cancer, right? And some very painful stuff to watch somebody you care about deteriorate like that, right? And we took care of him for a little bit, and then he was still healthy enough to take care of himself, but we were helping him along with many others that are here in this room that helped him, like Jimmy, a few other people that are in here. And, it reached a point where he was healthy enough to make it to our wedding, but then he started deteriorating slowly after that, and he was on this plane to go to Thailand, and he stopped in Northern California to have dinner with me and his daughter. And when he got off the plane, I said, "Oh, you're not going nowhere." And he's like, "No, I got to go to Thailand in the morning." I said, "No, you're not going nowhere. What hospital am I taking you to?" And so we took him to the hospital, and he only had a few months to live, they said. So they released him and in my care in hospice at my house. And so, I had the honor of taking care of the person that introduced me to Narcotics Anonymous into his last days. He wasn't a little guy. I had to carry him up on my back and walk him up the stairs to bathe him because the shower was upstairs. I had to wipe his butt, be there for him. When he passed away, he had his daughter there, and that was one of his greatest hopes, right? I was there. He had a couple sponsees there, and we were actually holding his hand and rubbing on him when he took his last breath. And people were checking on me to see if I was okay after he passed away, and I was like, yeah, I'm hurting. I miss him already, but I'm gonna be okay, because one thing is that if I decide to get loaded over this, it'd be like, you know what? All that stuff you did for me, I really don't care about any of it. It would be like all that time you've given up, all the stuff you taught me, it doesn't even matter to me. And he mattered to me. He mattered the world to me. He still matters to me. So I'm very grateful. I'm going to wrap it up. How much time I got here? Yeah. So I'm going to tell this little story, right? Before I close, there's this guy in San Quentin. And then there's this preacher man, right? And this preacher's doing his program the way he does it, right? So he's in there, and this guy in San Quentin says, "Hey, preacher man, would you pray with me?" So the preacher says, "Sure, what do you want to pray about?" He's like, "Man, I'm tired of using. I'm tired of hurting people. I can't stop using, not even in here. I'm tired of putting my family through it." So the preacher says, "Okay," puts his hands in the cell. Nobody puts their hands in the cell, right? Puts his hands in the cell, grabs them by his hands, and prays with them. And then moves on and does his thing. When that guy gets out of San Quentin, he goes to look for that preacher, right? That preacher's no longer here. He passed away. But he was introduced to that preacher's wife. Well, that preacher's wife was my grandmother, and that person my grandmother called was that person that was in San Quentin. That's how God works in my life. He can work in yours too. Thanks for letting me share.